Welcome to The Watchman. Well, we have a very special treat for you today. We're joined in studio by CBN's Jerusalem Bureau Chief, Chris Mitchell. Chris is the author of a fantastic new book called Dateline, Jerusalem. It is a must-read. Everyone needs to pick it up. Ripped from today's headlines, Chris's on-the-ground perspective and experiences in the eternal city, Jerusalem. Chris, welcome.
Hey, Eric, great to be with you.
So great to have you, my friend. Yeah, it's great to see you on this side of the pond.
Yeah, exactly.
So much to talk about with this fabulous new book, Dateline, Jerusalem, hot off the presses. I know this was a work that was years in the making. We had talked about this for a long time.
Yeah, we did.
You were working on the book, Chris. Yeah. What kind of motivated you to write this book, first of all? You've been in Jerusalem for 13 years now. You're a Jerusalemite now.
Yeah, it feels like it.
Tell us a little bit about what went into the book.
Well, you know, living in Jerusalem is sort of like walking into a history book. And you're not only, you know, ancient history, you look around and things are hundreds, if not thousands of years old. And so it's just a real privilege to be there. Part of the reason behind Dateline Jerusalem is to explain to people what's happening in the Middle East. Because I think a lot of people have this sense that it's a blur to them. They see a 2 or 3 minute story, a news story, and they don't have the context or the perspective. And so the idea behind the Dateline Jerusalem is to explain what's happening, give them a clearer perspective, a clearer focus of what's going on in the Middle East, because it's important to everybody.
That's right, and how prophecy is unfolding in the Middle East. We'll talk a bit more about that, Chris.
Sure.
But I think it's great, too, because you write this book in such an easy-to-understand way for the folks at home. And you are a Native American. You know how to speak to an American audience, obviously. Right. You break down complex issues in the complex, chaotic Middle East in such an easy-to-understand way. At least that was my impression from reading it. So you've been in Jerusalem since 2000. Now, the Lord led you to Israel, clearly. We talked about this before. But tell us about how, when you arrived in Jerusalem, it was a chaotic time in Israel at the height of the Second Intifada. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, we arrived in August, the middle of August of 2000, myself, my wife, and 3 children. They were 16 and 11 and 8 at the time. And, you know, anytime you move to a new country, it's pretty traumatic. But about 5 weeks later, at the end of September, what's called the Second Intifada, as you said, Intifada, an Arabic word that means struggle, began. And so in Jerusalem and throughout Israel, there were suicide bombings, shootings, terror attacks, close to our kids' school, close to work, close to our home. A few times we actually heard some of the bombs go off. We were just talking to my daughter the other day about the experience she had where she was at school, just left the school, heard an explosion, had to go back in the school, calls me, I had to go get her. So it was a very traumatic experience for several years.
And that was your introduction.
That was our introduction. Somebody said we got thrown into the deep end of the pool. Right. The good thing is the Lord's in the deep end of the pool, so he protected us and kept us safe.
Now, how did your family react? Your wife, your 3 beautiful children, how did they deal with it? It must have been tough for everyone.
It was tough for everybody. I think it was tough perhaps for my wife. I mean, now her kids are in harm's way. And yet, we did have a strong sense that God had called us and He would take care of us. There's a scripture in Psalm 91 that says, "He that dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty." And so even though the danger was there, we felt God had called us and that in the midst of it, He would protect us. And not only my wife and I, it's one thing to put yourself in harm's way, but He protected our kids. And that was even much more important to us as parents.
Yeah, God will give His angels charge over you,
Psalm
91. And that's one of the things I love about the book, Chris. You get into your personal backstory, which is so fascinating, and it gives the reader a sense that they know you, that they're walking with you in Israel. It's one of the things I really love about the book, the personal nature of it, Chris.
Right.
But we're talking about how when you arrived in Israel, oh my gosh, it was chaotic, it was violent, but overall, and I think a great point you make in this book, and you interview an NBC correspondent named Martin Fletcher. You talk about his experiences in the book. Israel overall is not what we see on the news, the negativity, the gloom, the terror.
Exactly,
Talk about the real Israel that you've gotten to know over the past 13 years.
Right. Now, we did talk about the Intifada, which was a dangerous period for several years. But after that, things have calmed down a lot. And as you said, we talked to Martin Fletcher, and he said there's really an Israel that you never know. And that's one of the chapters in the book. And he says that the media has really presented, given a kind of a skewed version of what Israel is like. And I know people, when they come over, they think they're going to have an M16 as soon as they get off the plane and, you know, and dodge a bomb or something. And that's not the case. And the testimony that I've heard over and over by people as they come here, and usually they have friends and family say, "Are you crazy for going to Israel?" And when they get there, they feel safe. Many times they feel the sense of belonging, the sense of coming home, and it's a remarkable place to be. And as Martin Fletcher makes the point, he says there's only one country in the world that's its right to exist is questioned. It's not North Korea, it's not Iran, it's Israel. And Israel's an amazing place, a wonderful place.
Yeah, so true. The first time I went to Israel, Chris, I felt it was almost like a gravitational pull on my heart. I couldn't wait to get back. It is magical. It is God's land, truly. You get into the threats in the book, obviously, and I want to talk about Iran, about Hezbollah, because you have been in some very dicey places. You were in Egypt. We're going to throw to that in a second. But real quick, Chris, how is living in Israel the past 13 years? Has it brought you, you've always been on fire for the Lord, obviously. Has it brought you even closer to God, to be where Jesus walked, where the prophets walked? How has it kind of helped you grow in your faith?
A lot. I mean, to be able to see what's happening in the headlines, and then have the privilege to cover it, to cover the threats that are facing Israel, to cover the stories like Jews coming back to the land of Israel for the first time in 2,000 years. So you get to see the prophecy unfolding right before your eyes, and not only get to see it, but get to report on it. And you know, that's sort of the theme, you know, throughout the book Dateline Jerusalem, is that you get to see prophecy unfolding before your very eyes. Just to give a quick example, I mean, we saw Jews returning from China back to the land of Israel. And Isaiah says, you know, fear not, for I'll bring your descendants from the east. Well, it was as if Isaiah was writing the headlines of the day to see these Chinese Jews come. So it really has deepened your faith to see the Bible here, the headlines here, and see we're living in remarkable times.
Yeah, most people probably don't even know there are Jews in China.
Yeah, exactly.
In China. Talking about the headlines, and just to show you what Chris does on the ground in the Middle East, and what you will find in Dateline Jerusalem. We're going to go right now to a story Chris did recently in Egypt, in the midst of this Muslim Brotherhood jihad against Christians. Take a look at this on the ground in Egypt. Chris Mitchell.
This is a 100-year-old church, and as you can see, it's been completely destroyed on the inside. One Egyptian expert said the violence against the churches in Egypt is the worst in nearly 700 years. This exclusive video, aired for the first time on nationwide TV, shows the inside of the sanctuary is completely gutted and the altar destroyed. Now the church uses this makeshift altar outside, and the pastor explained to us they started holding their services at 6:30 in the morning. Engineers say the church would need to be torn down before it could be rebuilt.
To be sure that everything is burned, they put fire in every place. Before this time, they make a sign for Christian places or cars or houses or buildings, and if the place has an X on it, they burn the place.
The churches weren't the only targets. Schools, cars, and businesses owned by Christians were destroyed. Muslim radicals marked Christian businesses with a black X before torching them. Perhaps most shocking was the destruction of this Christian orphanage. This is a Coptic Christian orphanage called Christ Soldiers. Muslim mobs came in here and they destroyed the building, leaving about 200 children without shelter. But they wanted to leave a message for the attackers, and they wrote it on the wall outside. And it said, "You meant to hurt us, but we forgive you."
Wow, that is just some very cutting-edge stuff. You're not going to see anyplace else. You're going to see it on CBN News. You're going to find it in this book, Dateline Jerusalem. Chris, you know, you're in Egypt. You write about it. This is powerful, the way the book opens. The first Egyptian revolution in 2011, you were there. You barely escaped with your life.
Yeah, exactly. It was close.
We'll talk more about that. But this most recent Egyptian revolution, tell us about being on the ground there and seeing burnout churches and what the jihadists there are doing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you wrote the book on the Muslim Brotherhood, so you know this was a reaction by the Muslim Brotherhood against many of the churches and the Christians throughout Egypt. Dozens of churches that were burned, even an orphanage that was burned. And it was probably the worst violence in Egypt against the Christian church in 700 years. Just a terrible story. And that's one of the stories told in Dateline Jerusalem, told by you, told by CBN News, that isn't reported or underreported in many other times. There's a great persecution against the Christians throughout the Middle East.
First the Saturday people, the Jews, and now the Sunday people, the Christians. Chris, we're going to talk much more about that after the break. I want to talk about Egypt, your experiences in the war zone of Lebanon, much more coming up with our good friend Chris Mitchell, CBN's Jerusalem Bureau Chief, and the author of the new blockbuster, Dateline Jerusalem. Stick around.
Hi, my name is Breda. I'm just your typical 9-year-old. I love singing, dancing, reading, discovering the simple truth. My grandpa says you're never too young or old to learn the value of a dog. He taught me the true value of this paper dollar. You see this little gold coin? It says $1 on it. But guess what? That was a long time ago. Today, this gold dollar is worth over 100 paper dollars. This paper dollar is now only worth 1 penny compared to America's former money, the gold dollar. My grandpa says the only money worth saving today is real money, gold or silver coins. He's pretty smart. How our paper dollars lost their value, he says. It's all explained in a new book, The Great Debasement. It's easy and fun to read. If you call the number on the screen, I will send you a copy totally free. Next time, I will explain the simple truth about money.
Help!
If an emergency happened right now, you can have help at the push of a button with Medical Alert.
Remember when I took that fall, Mary?
Oh, yes, that was terrible.
Yes, it was. Help! And I thought, what if you hadn't been there? I ordered my Medical Alert the next day.
I can't describe how safe I feel now with my Medical Alert. You didn't know I was wearing it, did you?
Medical Alert is easy to install, waterproof, and covers you inside your home and out.
It helps me feel safe from fires, break-ins.
And of course, a Medical Alert. And if you don't have a home phone, don't worry. They have that covered.
There's always help at the push of a button. Don't wait till you need it.
Get Medical Alert for less than $1 a day. There are no long-term contracts. Order now and get your second button free. Call for your free brochure.
For your free Medical Alert system with second button free, call 800-575-8507.
And welcome back. We're talking to our good friend Chris Mitchell, CBN's Jerusalem Bureau Chief, author of the gripping new eyewitness account of prophecies unfolding in the Middle East, Dateline, Jerusalem. Pick it up. And by the way, Chris is host of the weekly CBN News show, Jerusalem Dateline. Also check that out on cbnnews.com. Chris, I gave quite a teaser a few minutes ago. I said, Chris, you nearly lost your life in Egypt. You barely escaped. Tell us what happened. I remember talking to you in Jerusalem when you returned from that fateful trip to Egypt during the overthrow of Hosni Mubarak in January, February 2011. We have about 3 minutes in this block. We don't have a whole lot of time, and it is an epic story. But you were in Egypt, you were covering the overthrow of Mubarak, and man, you ran into some hairy situations.
Yeah, very hairy situations. We went down there in the middle of this revolution. It was January, I think, 30th, 31st. Hosni Mubarak was on his way out. I mean, thousands of people had gathered in Tahrir Square, sort of the epicenter of this revolution. I was there in a place called the Ramses Hilton, just a few blocks away from it. I was there on a Tuesday. Tuesday was a very festive day. Thousands of people there. They figured Mubarak's going, and they were happy about that. The next day on Wednesday, again, thousands of people in Tahrir Square, still this sort of festive mood that he's leaving. But what happened at the middle of the day, all these anti-Mubarak people are in Tahrir Square, then all of a sudden these pro-Mubarak people came by the hundreds and then the thousands. So I saw that from the 7th story of I was working out of the AP Bureau, I saw that happen. I guess as a journalist, I'm curious. I followed the crowd. I'm in the middle of the crowd, and all of a sudden these two forces, pro and anti-Mubarak, are facing off, and I just felt the Holy Spirit say something's going to happen. And just like that, all of a sudden people started throwing shoes at each other, which in the Arabic world is a great insult. Yeah, it's a great insult. Well, then it was packed with people, and people started running. And so I had to stay with the crowd. It was almost this sense like, if you don't stay with the crowd, you're going to fall, you're going to get trampled. Yeah. And I was able to get some refuge off the side of the road. I had a small JVC camera in my pocket, pulled it out, started videotaping what became a riot. And then after I was videotaping, I was calling Steve Little, you know, back in CBN.
CBN producer,
Drew Parkhill. I'm saying there's a riot going on. I had just filed a story. I said the story's obsolete. We got to change the story. Secret policeman came up to me and told me in Arabic, I don't speak Arabic, but I knew what he meant, stop videotaping. I stopped the videotaping, still on the phone, and I walked away from him because I was concerned, obviously. Sure. And there was another guy, and they came up to me, took the camera out of my hand, took the phone out of my hand, the camera out of my pocket. And I had two thoughts. First of all, get it back, and then I thought, well, there's two of them, one of me. This is not working. Yeah. So later on, the riot became a battle between these pro and anti-Mubarak people. I was in a hotel, literally watching this battle unfold. But the hotel itself was in danger of actually being besieged by these people that were against, because mainly the people in the hotel were journalists. Right. And I'm thinking, this is not a safe. Exactly, Westerns. And it was the only time I really felt I might not make it out. Never had that feeling before, and I knew my wife had sent me an email, and we have this agreement: if I'm in a dangerous place or situation, if I don't make it out, we'll see you on the other side. And also, if you do get captured or kidnapped, just don't deny the Lord. And but thankfully that morning, the next morning, I got a call from Rob, our boss, and said you better get out of there, and I was able to get out.
Amen, Chris. Much more coming up. That's the kind of gripping story you will find in this book. Pick it up. More to come with Chris Mitchell. Don't move.
Attention sleep apnea patients. Are you tired of the expense and hassle of getting your CPAP and BiPAP supplies? Are you fed up with dealing with ill-fitting, leaking, or worn-out masks and straps? Are you worried about the effects that unsanitary tubes, cushions, and filters have on your health? If you said yes to any of these questions, Allied Medical Supply Network has the solution to your problems. You could qualify to have your supplies regularly delivered right to your door at little or no cost to you. That's right, no more inconvenience, no worn-out masks and straps, no more unsanitary equipment, just restful sleep. Call Allied Medical Supply Network today to determine if you may qualify to receive your fresh, brand-name supplies at little or no cost. Don't delay. Call us now to see if you are eligible to save money on regular delivery of your CPAP and BiPAP supplies. Call 1-800-815-9947. That's 1-800-815-9947. Or go to cpapsupplyhelpline.com.
Announcing an important breakthrough in healthcare that can benefit everyone. If you or anyone you love needs affordable health insurance, regardless of a pre-existing medical condition, call Quick Insurance 123 today and get the immediate relief you deserve. Quick Insurance 123 was created to provide affordable health insurance to all uninsured Americans, with or without pre-existing conditions. This is not a discount card. This is a real insurance program that lets you choose from many affordable health plans, with access to doctors, hospitals, emergency services, and more. So call the number on your screen now and get the health coverage you need, just for calling. As a special bonus, we'll send you a free prescription savings card that could save you up to 85% on your prescriptions. That's right, you could save up to 85% on your prescriptions just for calling. Call Quick Insurance 123 to find out how you can get affordable health insurance and receive your free prescription savings card just for calling. Don't wait. Getting a free quote is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Call today.
Welcome back. We're talking to CBN's Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell, author of Dateline Jerusalem and host of the Jerusalem Dateline Show. Chris, what a story about Egypt, man. I mean, just amazing. And we didn't have time to get into it, but the way you got out the next morning, a miraculous cab ride to the airport. Tell us about that a little bit.
Okay, I figured, how do I get out of here? And I called a few people that I had known and had acquaintance in Cairo, but they weren't able to get me. So I thought, what do I do? So I went out, believe it or not, just simply got a cab. And he got me through several checkpoints that were vigilante checkpoints at the time. Had to go present my identification to these guys with machetes and guns, and thankfully made it through to the airport. It wasn't until later I actually had to get a State Department evacuation flight later that night to get out of there, and then made it to Frankfurt, Germany, then back to Jerusalem.
Back to Jerusalem. Wow, what a story, man. It's all in here. It's all in this fantastic book. Another account you have that I think is gripping is your time in northern Israel during the 2006 Lebanon war, when Israel was fighting against Hezbollah. You literally were seeing rockets fall around you. Talk about that, Chris.
We were in Metula, which is right on the northern border of Israel, just a few feet away, actually, from Lebanon. And that was the 34-day war, 2006, now called the Second Lebanon War between Hezbollah. They were firing Katyusha rockets. I think there were about 900 that fell in a place called Kiryat Shimona, which is just about a couple of miles away from Metula. So they were going above us. Artillery from the Israeli Defense Forces were going out. We were actually seeing some of the bombs fall just a couple of miles away. Just an amazing sight. What it actually did for me, I remembered my dad He was in World War II, and he used to say, you know, you could tell incoming and outgoing. And all of a sudden, it dawned on me. You could actually hear, you know, the rockets coming in and know it was incoming, and the artillery going out would be outgoing. Just a remarkable experience to be really literally there on Israel's front lines. I mean, this is a battle for survival for Israel, and I think people need to understand that the proximity of things there is so close because it basically shut down northern Israel. About 1 million people had either fled northern Israel or were in bomb shelters. So it's a remarkable thing for what they have to go through, and I think people need to understand how close things are and how much of a threat Israel continues to be in.
Yeah, but as a journalist, everyone's fleeing and you're going towards the action, everyone's running away.
Well, that's the exciting part, I guess, of the journalist.
It is. I try to explain to my family. They say, you're crazy. I said, you don't understand. As a journalist, this is what we do. This is what God placed us in
this position. It's a real privilege.
It is. It is a privilege. It's a privilege. And Psalm 91.
Exactly, and that's what I was going to say as well. In the same sense, in fact, we could drive up from Jerusalem during the weekends. We would stay in Jerusalem, go up like on a Sunday afternoon to cover the war during the week, and you could tell when you were in rocket range of the Katyusha rockets because oftentimes they would fall in a field. You could see the fires, and you just knew you were in range. And yet, within knowing you were in range, it was almost like this canopy of peace that would come on you. And it was this Psalm 91 sense that God would protect you, that you're dwelling in the shadow of the Most High. Amen. If He's called you up there, even though it's dangerous, He'll take care of you.
Amen. Yeah. And you talk about Israel being surrounded on all sides, Chris. In the book, wow, you get into Turkey, Iran, Syria, Hamas, Hezbollah. It's all in here.
Yeah.
Syria, obviously another hot spot. You've been on the Golan Heights, right on Israel's border with Syria. You talk about some briefings you've had with the IDF. What's your sense right now on what's going on in Syria, and what are the Israeli forces, how are they viewing Syria right now? Obviously very concerned.
Right, very concerned. I mean, one of the instances we talk about in the book is being right there, actually hearing some of the gunfire between just some of the villages there right on the Syrian-Israeli border. I think Israel is quite concerned about what's going to happen post-Assad. If there is a post-Assad, if Assad does fall, then what's going to take place and who's going to be in charge of Syria? A great concern about the Muslim Brotherhood there, some of these Salafist groups, these jihadist groups that have infiltrated, these interlopers that have come in from all over the Islamic world. I mean, you know that.
It's an Al-Qaeda base now.
Exactly. And so this is going to be, if they get weapons of mass destruction, it's a game changer for Israel. And what used to be the quietest border for Israel in almost a generation is now maybe one of the most dangerous borders on Israel.
Yeah, and Syria is a chemical weapons powerhouse as well. And pick your poison there. Hezbollah, Iran, Al-Qaeda, no one to back, no good choices there. Yeah. Chris, real quick, we have about 30 seconds left. This Iran nuclear weapons threat obviously continues to loom. It seems like endgame is approaching. We've been saying that for a while now.
Yeah, we have. But I would agree with you, because I think this diplomatic effort by the U.S. and by the West with Iran, I think puts Israel in a real precarious position. Because if the world is going to try to end this by diplomacy, Israel's not buying it, and I think they're not buying it for a reason, because Iran's just playing for time. And I think there could be a confrontation perhaps next year between Israel and Iran.
I agree with you, Chris. And Prime Minister Netanyahu, I think, made that clear at the UN. We will not allow them to go nuclear. This is the kind of analysis you'll find in Dateline Jerusalem. Chris has talked to Israeli officials on and off the record for 13 years, folks. We're wrapping up with Chris. Don't move. After the break, stay tuned.
Grace, music is unpredictable.
I know I have what it takes.
The Dove Foundation raves. Grace Unplugged is remarkable and inspiring.
This is not about the music. It's about everything else that goes with it.
Dad, were you watching me?
A moving and meaningful film.
This book, his words shook me. It was like my whole world.
That parents and teens should see together, says Focus on the Family.
What are you going to do? You're going to drag her back home?
Yeah, I might. I think maybe you're fighting God. Just stop running.
Grace Unplugged, rated PG, now playing.
If you had a choice between going bald and a full head of hair, which would you choose? Advances in medical science have resulted in the world's first and only permanent solution to hair loss.
Yes!
You wash it, you cut it. It's your own real naturally growing hair. When it comes to hair restoration, no one in the world has more experience than Bosley. The results look completely natural and are affordable on nearly any budget. But the entire process can't be explained in 60 brief seconds. So to find out more about this clinically proven and permanent solution to hair loss, call now to receive your free no-obligation information kit. It'll answer all of your questions about hair loss and hair restoration. Plus, we'll also send you this $250 gift certificate just for calling. Every day you wait, you're losing more hair. So don't put it off any longer. You owe it to yourself to find out the facts. Choose hair. Choose Bosley.
Call 800-868-9957. That's 800-868-9957.
Grace, music is unpredictable.
I know I have what it takes.
The Dove Foundation raves. Grace Unplugged is remarkable and inspiring.
This is not about the music. It's about everything else that goes with it.
Dad, were you watching me?
A moving and meaningful film.
This book, his words shook me. It was like my whole world.
That parents and teens should see together, says Focus on the Family.
What are you gonna do? You're gonna drag her back home?
Yeah, I might. I think maybe you're fighting God. Just stop running.
Grace Unplugged, rated PG, now playing.
Welcome back. We're wrapping up with our good friend, our brother, Chris Mitchell, author of Dateline, Jerusalem, the must-read new blockbuster. Pick it up, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold from coast to coast. Chris, as we wrap up here, it's been great to have you here.
Great to be with you, Eric.
Watchman,
I love it.
The lair, the bunker. Yeah. Talk about what God is doing in Israel right now. I mean, some of the unreported stories that you highlight in Dateline, Jerusalem. Talk about what the church is doing in Israel and just miracles, dreams, visions, how God is moving in Israel right now.
I think there's we live in an amazing time in history, and that's what Dateline Jerusalem talks about. First of all, the gospel is going around the world. It says in the book of Matthew that this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness, and then the end shall come. And there's two great mission movements right now, taking the gospel from China, from Africa, from literally all over the world, and they're heading back to Jerusalem. And so when you see these things happening that the Bible prophesied happening right now, we live in an amazing time, and I think people need to understand that, and they need to understand what's happening in the Middle East. One of the things as well is that there's more evangelism going on in the Muslim world than any time in the 1400-year history of Islam. I know you report on some of the bad side, but the good side right now is the fact that Muslims are coming many times through dreams and visions. Supernaturally, Jesus is appearing to Muslims, and they have a dream, and they all of a sudden, we talked to one of the guys in the book, his name is Ali, now a Turkish pastor. He went to Mecca, had a dream. Jesus appeared to him and said, "Follow me." He left Mecca, and now he's following Jesus. And this is happening thousands of times. One of the fastest growing churches in the world is Iran and Afghanistan. And this is because of dreams and visions, because of the internet, and because of satellite television. And it's penetrating this sort of religious colossus for 14 centuries, and now penetrating that darkness. Those are some of the things that are happening. People being raised from the dead, miracles, signs and wonders. They're happening throughout the Middle East. And I think people need to understand what's happening and that it matters to them here in the U.S. or wherever they are in the world. What happens in the Middle East is going to have an impact on them. And one of the themes in the book as well is the fact that all these roads, all these trends are heading back to Jerusalem. And there's a statement, 2,000 years ago, they said all roads led to Rome. Now, 2,000 years later, all roads are leading to Jerusalem. And what does that mean? That means Zechariah said that was going to happen. And we know eventually, whenever that does come, this is where Jesus is going to come and set up his kingdom.
Well, thank God you have a front row seat, Chris. Dateline, Jerusalem. Pick it up. Our good friend, Chris Mitchell.
Hey.
God bless you, brother.
Bless
we'll
you,
do it again next year in Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem.
Yes.
Okay.
And until next time, from the Watchman, take care, God bless, and remember, never hold your peace.